Hello, All About Agatha listeners. As I record this, I am just about to leave for my tour of the southern United States. So join me this coming week in Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. Details are at my website, which I have linked to in the show notes. I should also note that many of you have contacted me in the last day or so about the big Agatha Christie related news, this writing course that was created by BBC Maestro, in which Agatha Christie herself, an on-screen representation of Agatha Christie, the author, using her voice and AI technology to mimic her voice, and a live actor to fill in the gaps, with the help of all sorts of digital technology. All this has resulted in a writing course hosted by Agatha Christie herself, or at least what seems to be Agatha Christie herself, using a lot of Christie's own words. There were people involved in this project who make frequent appearances on this podcast. I have every intention of covering this development, just not on this episode, in a future episode. Have no fear, we will be discussing it. Never a dull day in the world of Agatha Christie scholarship and fandom more generally. I also just want to take a moment to talk some spoilers. The following titles will be spoiled to varying degrees in this episode: The Affair at the Bungalow, Evil Under the Sun, Sparkling Cyanide, Towards Zero, Triangle at Rhodes, and then, of course, the two short stories that will be the focus of this episode: Wasp's Nest and Yellow Iris. Forewarned is forearmed, and now let's start the show. Welcome to All About Agatha, the podcast dedicated to reading and ranking every single mystery novel written by the Queen of Crime, Dame Agatha Christie. And oh, listeners, how far we have come since the days of ranking those mystery novels of Agatha Christie's. As you can perhaps tell by the turn signal blinking in the background, this is a roving episode of All About Agatha. This is very exciting. I am on my way in the car. Don't worry, I'm hands-free. I'm being safe here. I am on my way to a performance of two Poirot plays. This is a Poirot Double Bill of The Wasp's Nest and The Yellow Iris, or Wasp's Nest and Yellow Iris, depending on whether we're watching the theatrical adaptation or reading the texts, which is something that I did last night in preparation for this theatrical performance. So these two short plays are being performed back-to-back without an intermission at the Riverside Community Players in Riverside, California. This is about an hour inland from where I am, in the more coastal region of Los Angeles. So I am on my way there in the car, which is why I sound the way that I do. But yeah, I am really excited to see both of these plays, neither of which I have seen performed before. The plays are directed by friend of the podcast, Christopher Diehl, who was one of my guest co-hosts on the Putting On an Agatha Christie Play episode that I did a while back with 3 guest co-hosts. And there are actually a few other friends of the podcast who are going to be at the play as well, and I'm hoping to catch them and record their thoughts for this roving podcast. So more to come. I just have to get there first. You know what? Before we get to the show, I am going to engage in a little bit of time travel here and send us on over to an interview that I did with the director of this show, Christopher Diehl. It'll give us some great context for what I'm about to watch and what you all will experience with me to a certain extent, as much as I can manage, with the use of some rudimentary recording equipment, which does mean a smartphone. All About Agatha has never been a technical powerhouse of a podcast. We like to keep things simple, and we'll continue to do so today, but I'm hoping that the simple use of the voice memo app on my phone will allow you to get a little bit of a taste of what it's like attending this play. But first, let's have a little chat with the play's director. My guest today has been on the podcast before, a little over a year ago, actually, in the episode Putting on an Agatha Christie Play, where I had three guest co hosts on to discuss what it's like to bring a Christie play script to life in the theater. And we are going to be having a similar but much more focused discussion today because my friend Christopher Diehl has been hard at work on a Poirot Double Bill being performed close to me here in Southern California at the Riverside Community Players Theater. The two Poirot plays he's putting on are the original BBC scripts for The Wasp's Nest and The Yellow Iris. Very, very interesting. As of the recording of this conversation, that show will be debuting in just about 2 weeks' time. So I figured this was an excellent opportunity to sit down with Chris as a theater director who is currently immersed in Poirot on the stage. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you, Kemper. Great to be back.
All right, so I want to start by providing a little background on Chris. I'm not going to make him do this himself. I'm such a kind podcast host. Chris is originally from Pennsylvania, but he moved to California about 30 years ago after college to make a go at an acting career. The siren call of Hollywood. But he very quickly decided that the life of a struggling actor was not for him. Very smart of him. And he decided to focus on the theater. He has directed and acted in nearly 100 productions here in Southern California with both professional and amateur groups. He's won over 20 different local theater awards for his work. And for the past 2 decades, he's been primarily attached to the Chino Community Theater, where he currently serves as the artistic director. But over the years, he's also served as its president and vice president. He currently has a non-theater related day job, but he is very much hoping to get something more theater related, perhaps in the field of education. I really hope that happens for him because he is so clearly a dedicated and passionate student of the theater. And the more people with whom he can share that passion, the better. Chris has loved Agatha Christie ever since he was 12 years old. Sounds about right to me. When he picked up a copy of Sleeping Murder at his school library, his second Christie was Nemesis, for the record. Excellent. He has acted in The Mousetrap twice. He has directed The Unexpected Guest, The Mousetrap, which was canceled due to COVID. Boo. Witness for the Prosecution, and now this Poirot Double Bill. He is also working on his first original full-length play. According to him, it's currently in its secret notebook stage, which is an excellent way of saying it's a work in progress. I'm totally going to start using that. Chris, you are obviously a true Christie fan and scholar. You've even made the pilgrimage to Torquay for the Christie Festival. So
yes.
You've established your bona fides as an agathologist. Let's get right into this Poirot Double Bill, because this is not your standard garden variety Poirot play or two plays. What you're putting on here isn't even precisely a stage play. And we've covered this before on the podcast, but what we have here is actually Poirot's first appearance on television with The Wasp's Nest and Poirot's first appearance on radio with The Yellow Iris. Both of those appearances were in 1937. Which is pretty early, especially for TV. And interestingly, Poirot appeared on TV first in The Wasp's Nest and then on radio in The Yellow Iris several months later that same year.
Isn't that kind of wild?
It's crazy. It's crazy. And rather than listening to me babble on about the provenance of these titles, could you tell us a little bit about these BBC scripts that you're bringing to the stage? Maybe a little rundown of their unusual history, and then how and why you came to be staging them.
Yeah, absolutely. They were brought to my attention. Well, I'm sure I had already heard of them because I have read a lot about Agatha Christie, and I read Julius Green's book and Mark Aldridge's book about Agatha Christie on the screen. And so it certainly come to my attention before, but when they had brought it to my attention, this theater had called me and they do this thing called a spotlight series where they have these kind of lesser known shows that are often passion projects for local directors who are looking for a theater to do it. And so they will provide the space and not much else, really. Before I get into all that, as far as the plays go, they had said, yeah, we're doing these two kind of rare Agatha Christie one acts featuring Hercule Poirot. And I thought they must have gotten that wrong. I didn't know that she had written anything for Hercule Poirot for the stage aside from Black Coffee. So finally, they sent me the script, and it was labeled a Poirot Double Bill. which is what Samuel French, at least that's the company that we're working with, Samuel French. It's licensed by Samuel French under the title A Poirot Double Bill by Agatha Christie. And they do feature these two one act, not even one act, really. We're doing it as a one act, these two together, because they're pretty short. Wasp's Nest, probably, we haven't totally timed them yet, but Wasp's Nest, I would say, is under 30 minutes, and Yellow Iris might be a little over that with the music. But yes, they are from 1937. The Wasp's Nest is Poirot making his television debut. And when I saw the date, I thought, could that be right? Because we just think of television as kind of starting in the 1950s with Milton Berle and Lucille Ball and all that. But television got a really early start in England. And I think it was probably mostly the rich, the well-off who had access to television at this time. It very quickly got cut off, I guess, when the war came around and basically television production ceased for a while. But this is a really early TV production featuring Hercule Poirot. And I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Kemper, but I don't believe it was actually written, The Wasp's Nest I'm talking about, was actually written for television. I believe it was written for something else, for Francis Sullivan, who was going to be playing Poirot. And I believe it was written for a charity event that he was going to perform. And the BBC said, hey, I think this would work for, a television production because it's very easy. It's just one set and just a few characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've both read the same section in Julius Green's excellent book, right? Agathologists
Yes.
Unite. No, 100%. I mean, it is often trotted out, The Wasp's Nest, as, hey, this is the thing that Agatha Christie wrote for TV. And technically, she really didn't, because she wrote it as a stage play. It was supposed to be performed live. It was going to be for charity. And it was always supposed to be Francis L. Sullivan who was playing Poirot. And in fact, he did play Poirot in the TV episode that aired. Unfortunately, we have no recording of it because it was 1937. I mean, they barely had the technology to air the episode, let alone record it at that point. I mean, I do think we were like months into the airing of TV. It's crazy. I agree that we have a date of 1937 here. I really love that. So no, she really didn't write it for TV. It just got turned into a TV episode. And that's why it is so true. She so rarely wrote anything original for Poirot on the stage. And these, Black Coffee, full-length play, and Wasp's Nest for this weird little charity event that Francis L. Sullivan was supposed to do, that's it, right? And then she would just cut him out mercilessly out of, all of the other adaptations that she would do of her novels, because, as we will discuss, The Yellow Iris is something different entirely. That's for radio. So that's not, that's not meant to be performed live. So, you are taking something that was intended to be a live stage play and making it a live stage play, but most people know it as a TV production. And then The Yellow Iris was meant to be performed on radio and was, in fact, performed on radio in 1937. And now you're taking that and turning that into a live stage play. So I will be honest with you, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I have not read those scripts, which I'm sure I can get from Samuel French, right? I just have to buy the Poirot Double Bill. I should, and I will. But I'm curious what sort of extrapolation you had to do, if any, to bring this to a live space. Did Samuel French do that lifting for you? Like, did this sort of read as, okay, these are plays that I can produce as is on the page? Or did you have to engage in any sort of creative alterations or interpretations, I guess I should say?
Yeah, well, for The Wasp's Nest, which is not easy to say, by the way, that one was pretty much very easy to put on its feet just as it is, which is, of course, the beauty of it for a play. In fact, I believe Francis Sullivan wanted to use it as kind of like a party piece, where he would just kind of trot it out at any old occasion, and I can't believe Agatha Christie loved that. But anyway, it's very easy to stage. And of course, it was meant for the stage, so that helps. Yellow Iris is a different thing altogether. because it was meant for radio, and because you have these songs that are in, there's like five, I think there's like five of them throughout the play. Yeah, it is a very different thing. You have to be. I had to be a little creative with that because Samuel French, and I don't want to bash them, but they don't offer any help whatsoever when it comes to the songs. We have the lyrics that are in the script, but there's no music provided. And apparently, there's no music available anywhere that I could find for these songs. They are not. Let's just say that none of these songs became hits from this particular production. They are completely unknown to me. I have a feeling they just died as soon as this was done airing for the first time because I couldn't find them. I couldn't find the music to them anywhere.
Let's just actually pause for a second because I want to make sure for the uninitiated, people who might not be familiar with what exactly the Yellow Iris is as
Yes.
a radio play, we should just note, I mean, both of these plays are based on Agatha Christie short stories, right? So we have
Exactly.
Wasp's Nest, which became The Wasp's Nest, and Yellow Iris, the short story, which became The Yellow Iris. It's very odd, and I agree. There's so much awkwardness with the titles of these plays because Wasp's Nest, the short story, was WASPS apostrophe, so many wasps nest.
Yeah.
And then it became The Wasp's Nest apostrophe S, which I guess is a reference to the would-be murderer in the story. So that's awkward. And then Yellow Iris becomes The Yellow Iris. I don't blame Samuel French for just calling it A Poirot Double Bill because the titles are kind of a mess.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
So Wasp's Nest, I think, is actually pretty straightforward in terms of, a short story that then got adapted as this stage play and turned into a TV play as well. But Yellow Iris is really interesting. So the short story, Yellow Iris, was later expanded and slightly altered into the full-length novel Sparkling Cyanide, which is not a Poirot novel. It's a Colonel Race novel, even though it is a Poirot short story. Yellow Iris is a Poirot short story, so there's that. And then because it was going to be adapted as a radio play, the idea was to intersperse these songs, right? These performed sort of cabaret numbers, since the mystery is taking place in a sort of dinner theater, right? Or cabaret hall, a place where music is being performed around the people over the course of the story. So the idea was, this is the perfect thing to do on the radio because we can play music and have singers come in and sing the songs. And from what I understand, again, not having actually listened to the Yellow Iris, the radio play, but those original songs, the lyrics actually in some ways advanced the plot, which is also interesting because that's a little bit of an innovation that I think people credit Rodgers and Hammerstein with in Oklahoma, which is later than
let me
that.
say they do deserve the credit, Rodgers and Hammerstein, because these lyrics really don't advance the plot at all. In fact, that's why I was able to cut most of them.
So you do have the lyrics then. So you get the lyrics.
We do have the
Samuel
lyrics.
French.
There's no music provided whatsoever. Yes.
Got it. So the lyrics really don't actually do much. Because when I read that, I was like, hey, wait a second. This is pre-Oklahoma. How is this the first time I'm hearing
the lyrics may suggest certain moments. But no, they definitely aren't advancing the story in any respect.
Okay. So that's kind of the situation here. And that's why, we have this short one-act play of The Wasp's Nest, which is fairly straightforward. And then this slightly trickier, but very interesting short one-act play with music in Yellow Iris. So I just wanted to sort of get out there just in case people weren't familiar with these two Christie stories, because they are definitely a little bit obscure. So that's what we're dealing with. And then the one thing I just also want to note about the adaptational process here, where Yellow Iris is concerned, is that There is a bit of a debate as to whether or not Christie strictly adapted the radio play The Yellow Iris from the short story Yellow Iris, or whether she essentially wrote them at the same time. Maybe she even wrote the radio play first. It seems like probably not. I'm curious if you have any strong opinions on that.
When I read the short stories are very, very similar to the plays.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've read the short stories, you've basically read the plays. There's not a whole lot of difference. Much of the dialogue is intact from the short stories in the plays. So I'm not really sure. I don't know if she wrote Yellow Iris and they said, hey, Mrs. Christie, do you have a play that would work for this particular format that we want to do, where we have, musical performances interspersed within the story? And she said, oh, perfect. I just wrote this thing called Yellow Iris that would work. I don't know if she wrote it after she got that suggestion or not.
Right.
But yeah, I really don't have any, definite idea of which it is.
It kind of could have gone either way. And I mean, that's sort of the beauty of Christie, right? Because she was so creative and she also worked so fast. I mean, I could easily see it happening that way of like, oh, I just wrote this and yeah, sure, let's slot that in. Or
I had that idea, written in my notebook,
exactly.
2 years ago or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So, okay, let me write the radio play. Oh, but at the same time, I mean, I might as well reel it off as a short story as well.
Yeah.
Like why not?
Yeah, because they did, I believe, come out pretty close together. So
very, very close together.
That would make sense.
As opposed to Wasp's Nest, I mean, we know that the short story was initially published in serial form. It wasn't actually published. It wasn't collected in book form until much later, but we know that it was initially published in serial form years before the play version. So we know the direction of that one. But yeah, really, really interesting. Oh, okay. I had not realized that the lyrics were available to you, just not the music. So you basically, because you didn't even have the music, you kind of were just able to set the lyrics aside and then choose your own music. I mean, I'm fascinated by that process. I mean, how did you go about picking the music that you use for the show?
Yeah, well, there's one song that I really kind of wanted to keep intact, and it's called You'll Live in My Heart. And that is one song that they actually do mention by name in the play.
I had no choice but to adore you. Soon as I saw you under the moon, this new romance has only just started. Why must we be parted so soon? You live in my heart, and
it's reprised at the end. So I thought, well, maybe I can get I have a lot of talented friends, and I implored one of them to see if he could write some music to these lyrics, and he did. So I do have one of the songs in the play, and the other songs I picked myself with the help of my vocalist, who is playing Inga Anderson, who is actually one of the vocalists who performed that night on the BBC. She was a real person. I actually found that they had done an exhibit at a British Columbia museum at the end of last year. It's still going. So I was actually in contact with them to get some information and some pictures of her. So yeah, so she sings these songs throughout the play, and I picked songs because my touchstone for Poirot are the movies, the original kind of 1970s, 1980s movies featuring Peter Ustinov, Death on the Nile in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of what I was going for as far as an aesthetic, I guess you could say, a feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to feature songs from those big movies. So she's singing, I can tell you that there's a song from Murder on the Orient Express. There's a song from Death on the Nile. There's also a song from Evil Under the Sun that make appearances in the play.
Is You're the Top in this play?
No, that's the one that I didn't put in just because it didn't seem to fit the story.
Yeah, that might be a stretch, but I mean, when you mention music from Evil Under the Sun, that's the first thing that pops in my head, of course.
Exactly. It was the first thing that popped into my head. And yeah, it seems to work best when you have two divas being bitchy with each other and less so when it's just a soloist. So
Sure.
yeah, I skipped that one.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you have music that, is evoking those big splashy Poirot movies starring Peter Ustinov, and he was really your touchstone, which is so interesting. And
and I will say that while my Poirot, I am giving him a lot of freedom to kind of find his own way. I did ask him to go and watch Death on the Nile with Peter Ustinov, and he's obsessed with him now. So I said, David Suchet, maybe not the best direction to go for the stage. And I just kind of steered him a little towards the Ustinov direction. And I think that's kind of where he's landing. But he's also definitely bringing his own thing to this characterization. So,
well, and in a way, it makes sense because we know that The Wasp's Nest was basically written for Francis L. Sullivan, right? I mean, it is true. Julie Screen talks about how much ownership Larry Sullivan seemed to think he had over that play.
Yes.
It's like, well, it's not yours, really. Like, Agatha Christie did write this, but he was very much associated with it, and he did play Poirot on that TV episode, and he was going to do the live stage version for that charity event. And I would say that Peter Ustinov is very much in the Larry Sullivan mold of Poirot, right? The big, jovial, kind of, taking up a lot of air in the room, but in a really fun way. That's definitely one direction in which to go for Poirot. And then, David Suchet's is much more honed from the text, and he talks so much about that in Poirot and Me, and perfect for television, right? But that's a camera that has, narrative direction that's so different from what you need to do on the stage. And I totally get it. That's really interesting to me that Ustinov was sort of who you used, and that you had your Poirot even watch those movies, because I was going to ask you about that. I mean, that is sort of, there's a reason why Christie cut Poirot out of her plays. She didn't think he worked on the stage. She thought that he sucked all the air out and that he was a distraction. And, she just generally seemed to be annoyed with him. So, but, we don't really have that luxury when we put on plays because the public wants its Poirot. And, I think that's honestly a good thing, I guess, because I'm part of the public and I want my Poirot too. But yeah, I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about, directing Poirot on the stage as someone who's just aware of all of that. Like, I know you've read everything and you know what Christie's stance on it was. And I'm just curious how that process has been.
It's been really interesting because even though I've directed Agatha Christie plays before, directing these, it's a much different experience. Directing Poirot, you kind of feel a bit more of a responsibility because he is such a beloved and iconic character. And I didn't feel that with Witness for the Prosecution. I just wanted to do, the best version of Witness for the Prosecution that I can and do justice to her wonderful play. But these are very different. And they're also, you have to handle them a little differently because Poirot, even though I want him to be a real person, as you know, Poirot is something of a superhero, something of a magical presence. A character who just kind of shows up when he's needed. So there's something very whimsical about these stories in a way that you don't get even with The Mousetrap. So I think the British have no problem playing anything full out. It doesn't really matter if it's Harry Potter or Shakespeare or, anything in between. They commit to it fully. I think as Americans, we have a little more trouble with these kind of plays because they're not silly per se. But these are obviously situations that no human being would ever find themselves in. So you have to go at it with I don't know. I still think Agatha Christie writes real people, and I told my cast that. I said, I want you to play these people as real people, but you also have to play them with the sense of whimsy because these are not situations that are realistic. It's a fine line, I would say, that you're walking with these kind of plays. And I think I found a cast that gets it. I think they really understand how to play these characters so that they're big and colorful and fun, but the emotions are real and the humanity is there, and we can understand that. We can understand all of that underlying humanity that she brings to these very whimsical and far-fetched stories.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
totally makes sense. I appreciate that. It is tricky. It's doing two things at once, because if it's just completely farcical, that's not Christie. Like it's
Right.
it can't be divorced from reality completely. And yet, these aren't realistic depictions. And I think the trickiness with stage plays is that it is never more obvious that unreality than in a stage play, because you're right there. Like
Yes.
you're all in the same space. And I think it's a lot easier to say, this is kind of ridiculous, as opposed to when you're watching a TV show or a film, and certainly when you're reading a book, because when you're reading a book, you are engaging in that sort of construction, right? The creative construction of, I'm thinking of the characters, I'm the one imagining them interacting, the words are there, but I'm a partner in this. And that, she had down like that.
Yes.
She knew how to do that better than anyone, and it works. It works on almost all the time. It works on the page, but it's tricky in terms of theater. And obviously, the playwright is just one part of that. That's what's so great about theater. It has to do with the direction and the production and the acting. So I really do appreciate the challenge of that. And I agree. I mean, there is a little bit almost of like American reticence. Well, it's like we go all or nothing almost. It's kind of like, and you need to take a middle path almost. Like it requires a middle path and a bit of nuance and complexity. I feel like now I'm being dismissive of Americans and painting with a very broad brush, but you know what I mean. So,
well, I think, also the British are really steeped into these theatrical traditions that in a way that we aren't.
Yeah.
We were a fairly new country when film came along. So I think we get our acting traditions more from that than we do from theater. I'm just spitballing here, of course, but I do think that there is a little bit of a difference, and I do see it when I direct Christie out here. I feel like I have to almost give them a little bit of a tutorial, or at least tell them this is how I want it played, without telling people very specifically how I want them to play their character. But I want people to be real. And I do think you can do that with Christie in a way that you can't with maybe some other thriller writers. You can play three-dimensional characters in her plays. And even something like Wasp's Nest and Yellow Iris, which are short, there's not a whole lot of characterization here. These are all plot-driven. So you really have to expect your actors to bring all that out. Because it's not necessarily there on the page. So we've been having fun with that. We've been having fun adding some motivations for some of these characters and just kind of filling in some of the other stuff. Because I do think Agatha Christie trusted actors. I think she trusted them to bring the rest of it, because she understood theater. She knew she was only one part of this. And there was a producer and a director and stagecraft and everything that was going to be adding to her play. And I think she trusted that these were professionals and that they were going to do what they were expected to do.
Absolutely. And yeah, I agree with you on the different tradition within Britain. I was actually just talking recently on an episode about pantomime, just the tradition of pantomime, which I think still, like, there's just a cultural know-how when it comes to certain theatrical traditions that exists in the UK, just in a different way from here. And you see it, I think, in the radio plays, that tradition of radio plays, which still, are so much more popular there than here. It's just, our relationship to theater in the US is very different, I think, from the average person's relationship to theater in the UK. So that's really, really interesting. And, the thing that I actually love about this double bill, I didn't think about it until we were speaking, but normally when you have Poirot on the stage, you have to be doing it almost in violation of Agatha Christie, because unless you're doing Black Coffee, because
Yeah.
you're doing an adaptation that she didn't write, in which Poirot remains, or maybe you're like inserting him back into her version or something, but you know that it's something that she didn't want. And even though these are oddities, certainly with The Wasp's Nest, that is something that she wrote for the stage, and then with The Yellow Iris, that's something that she also wrote to be performed, and Poirot is in them. So it's kind of nice. Like it feels like you're being true to her spirit in terms of her theatrical creations, and yet you're doing two Poirot stories, and that's just a rarity. It doesn't happen often. So I think it's really nice, you know?
Yes, and I'm also telling people, trying to promote it as these are the last plays, essentially, that Agatha Christie wrote for Poirot, the last Poirot adaptations that were written by his creator. So I think that's something interesting and worth checking out for people. I actually have some people from the Agatha Christie Festival that are coming here to see this. Someone is actually flying in from Canada to see these shows because they just aren't done. I think we're the only when I looked it up the last time on Samuel French, I believe we are the only production of this happening in the world right now. So that's pretty fun, and I'm hoping more people do it because these are fun shows and they're not terribly difficult. They're, for a theater that might be just kind of coming up and maybe struggling to find an audience, Agatha Christie still brings them in. And these are shows that are pretty easy to produce. So the name Agatha Christie, will get you an audience. So anyone who's listening that has a small theater that may be looking for something to draw some people in that's not going to cost them a lot, because I can tell you, we didn't get a budget for this very much at all. So we are begging, borrowing, and stealing everything we can get. And like I said, I have a lot of talented friends that I leaned on to help me with this. So I'm really hoping it's going to be a good production.
Oh, I can't wait, because to be clear, I am attending this production. So I am super, super excited. Don't touch that dial. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of our episode. We just wanted to take a moment to ask you, our dear listeners, for a favor.
If you haven't already done so, we would very much appreciate it if you take a moment to, give us a rating or a review wherever you're listening to this podcast.
It really helps the podcast out because ratings and reviews make it much easier for other Christie fans such as yourselves to find our podcast.
And the more ratings and reviews we get, the more people we can reach.
It should take you a matter of seconds, and lucky you, we're going to provide you with those seconds right now, so go to it.
Thank you so much. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Later in this episode, I'm going to be sharing some reactions and on the go, in situ sort of treats from the production, because I think this is one in that it's so rarely performed. I want to share it with all of you as much as I can.
Well, can I also mention that this theater, they're celebrating their 100th anniversary. And so this is their 100th season, and they are actually particularly known in the area for doing a lot of mysteries and especially a lot of Agatha Christie. And one thing that they didn't have on their 100th season that seemed a bit of an oversight was they didn't have anything by Agatha Christie. So even though this isn't technically part of their season, this is a special Spotlight series show. It seems very appropriate that an Agatha Christie did sneak in to their 100th season, because they do Agatha Christie all the time. That's where I directed Witness for the Prosecution. That's where I directed The Mousetrap before COVID closed us down. So yeah, I'm really excited to be doing it at this particular theater because they do have such a long history in general, but a really long history with Agatha Christie. And I know their patrons are very excited about this. And in fact, they were chastising them for not having this included on their regular season. So, Christie is still box office. That's for sure.
Absolutely. She puts butts in seats. She just does.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
she does.
That is just an eternal fact. I love that. Well, they've probably done all of the standard Christie fare, right? So now they're doing some more of the unusual ones like this. That's really, really great.
I think I don't think they've done. I'm kind of hoping they do Verdict, because I'm kind of dying to do that show. I know a friend who actually saw it on stage and said it was really good. So I'm hoping to maybe nudge them to do that.
Ooh, the very controversial Verdict, and I haven't covered that one on Patreon. I am slowly going through all of the Agatha Christie plays over on the Patreon account, but Verdict is one of them I haven't covered yet. And really controversial one. Did not go over so well when it first came out, but
no, it didn't. But I think it's worthy. I think it's worthy of a revisit.
Yeah. Well, I'm also curious. I know that your reference point was Peter Ustinov for your actors and just as you were thinking about stage direction and stage presence and whatnot. But we do, of course, have 2 adaptations of these plays, right? Or really of the short stories within the David Suchet series. So we have Wasp's Nest. We also have Yellow Iris. Did you watch those at all? And I have a corollary question, which is, now that I'm thinking about all those musical numbers in the Yellow Iris, I'm trying to remember what they did on the Suchet program in terms of the musical numbers. So I'm curious if you watched them and incorporated any of that into your direction, and also how the musical acts kind of compare to what you're doing.
Yeah, you know what, Kemper? I didn't go back and watch them. I'm sure I've seen them, but sure. I decided I was kind of going back and forth to see if I wanted to go back and watch them. Mm-hmm. I decided I didn't. And I thought, well, I'm just going to kind of use my own imagination for this one. And I did reach out to our fellow friend, Mark Aldridge, who I met at the Agatha Christie Festival. If anyone wants to go to the Agatha Christie Festival, it's one of the great things about it is you can kind of hobnob with all these wonderful agathologists and biographers and all these wonderful people. And he actually helped me with a few little tidbits of the original Yellow Iris production that didn't make it into his book, his wonderful book, Agatha Christie on Screen. And I will sometimes, when I'm directing a show, I will sometimes seek out one of the adaptations if they exist. In this case, I just didn't. And maybe it's because I knew that it was more an adaptation of the short stories and that they would certainly have added much to them. So yeah, I stayed away from them is the short answer.
That is a defensible position. I mean, I was going to ask you, you kind of already answered the question already. I was going to ask you if you had even reread the short stories themselves, but it sounds like you have, and you were sort of.
I did read those. Yeah.
Yeah. But that too, I mean, even if you had decided to avoid those, I think there are some people that might have done that. So that makes sense to me, especially since you're kind of going in a different direction with them. Now I'm going to have to go back and remember what the Suchet series did with musical numbers. I mean, my guess is that it's not as many, right? Like it's not as interspersed. Future Kemper here, fresh off a rewatch of season/series 5, episode 3 of Agatha Christie's Poirot, starring David Suchet. The episode titled Yellow Iris. What a great excuse to rewatch a little David Suchet. There is only one song sung in the course of this episode. It is sung twice, though by 2 different singers and spaced out over 2 years, because this episode does a lot of padding of the short story Yellow Iris. Anthony Horowitz, who has continued to delight so many of us lately with the Magpie Murders series and the Hawthorne series that he is putting out in book form, he adapted this short story for TV, and there is a lot of invention. We go all the way to Argentina, even though Poirot does not meet up with Hastings over there, shockingly. And it's all a lot of fun. But yes, clearly the directive when they adapted the short story for that program was not to really pay attention to the radio play adaptation of Yellow Iris and to just treat the short story adaptation as they did any other. So we don't get any multi-song cabaret effect And in fact, the setting of the entire radio play, which is at the second of these dinners where something goes awry, the second of these staged dinners, is really only the final act of the episode. It's like the final 15 minutes, if that. So just something very different. I just thought that was worth noting, and I'm glad that I was able to watch one of my favorite shows. Okay, back to the episode.
I did cut out some of them because we said before we were recording this that you were going to mention a contemporary review of this that I'm also aware of, that complained that the musical numbers were getting in the way of the story and that people were starting to get into it and then, another musical number. So I actually did cut a few from the middle of the play when I thought this was the time when the story really needs to kind of go into second gear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it works. I think it works a little bit better because yes, there are a lot of songs in a very short play. So it's a lot, and I don't think the audience is going to miss the couple that I cut out.
So how many songs are in the play as written, like in the Samuel French version? How many songs does it call for if you were going to do all of them, just out of curiosity?
There are 5 different songs, and then there's a reprise of one of them at the end. So
Okay.
the one with the reprise I am doing, and then I threw in a couple new ones,
Right.
that I decided on with my vocalist, and
With
that
your
she was
talented
comfortable
musical
doing.
friends.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I cut a few, kept one of them that was in the original production, and changed a couple out.
So how many do you have then in your production? I'm just curious.
I have three songs and a reprise.
Got it.
So
3
there's
songs and a
four
reprise.
times somebody singing.
So you've basically cut out 2 of them. Yes, I was going to read out this review because it's a little mean. It's not mean, but it's definitely critical. This is a contemporary review in The Observer of the radio play The Yellow Iris when it first aired. The play itself turned out to be a 10-minute sketch padded with cabaret and dance music and made to spread over 40 minutes. When the sketch was playing, my interest was sustained, but the sequences were so brief and the intervening music, though good in its proper place, so prolonged that my attention wandered. Much better to have treated the piece as the short sketch it really was. I think a 10-minute sketch, you were saying that's a little bit of an exaggeration, right? It's not.
Yeah, it's definitely exaggeration. I mean, Poirot wouldn't get in his speech, denouement speech, in 10 minutes, I don't think. So yeah, that is a bit, but it is probably without the music. It is probably the same as what the Wasp's Nest.
Mm-hmm.
So with the music, it adds about 10 minutes or so. So that's definitely the grand finale of the evening. So and that has more characters and it has music. So that's a bigger production, and I think it works as the second of the double bill.
And so I believe you mentioned you're not including an intermission. Like these are just going to be back to back all at once because it takes up a little over an hour.
Yes. I don't think the audience would appreciate having to have an intermission after sitting for just 20 minutes.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it's going to work better as just 2 shows. And because it's in the round, we don't have a major set. So we're just going to have set pieces. So it shouldn't be too terribly difficult to transition into the next play. I think we'll be able to do it in just a couple minutes. In the same way that I did Witness for the Prosecution there, where we went from the Sir Wilfrid's office into the courtroom. Normally there's an intermission in between Act 1 and Act 2, and I went right into Act 2, and I was able to do that because it was in the round, and I think it worked really, really well.
That's great. I always hate intermissions, actually, when I'm because you're just like, oh, I'm comfortable. I get why they happen. I know the venues get to make money, and sometimes it's nice, bathroom break, etc. But I'm always impatient with them. I'm like, okay, let's get through this intermission. I mean, I did see The Brutalist recently. I actually really needed that intermission, so that was good,
Yes.
for example. But
Yeah, sometimes they are necessary, but I agree. I hate when I feel like I'm being forced an intermission
yeah,
onto me, and when it's not necessary, and I'm just kind of settling in and getting into the story, and then boom, I have to get up and twiddle my thumbs for 15 minutes
and socialize. I mean, come on.
yes. Oh,
No, I love that. It's two snappy Poirot plays back to back. That sounds like heaven, and I cannot wait to watch them. I have to ask you just one substantive question about the stories themselves. These two plays are curious, and the short stories that they're based on, because they are unusual within the canon in that they don't actually feature any murders happening over the course of the story, right?
yes.
The Wasp's Nest is a story about Poirot realizing that someone is intending to commit murder and then stopping them before they do.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people really love this story because of that. It has that kind of Minority Report aspect to it, which is
Yeah.
really cool and kind of heartwarming. Like at the end, it's like, oh, nothing bad really happened. How lovely.
Yes, it's actually very poignant at the end with the main character, Charles Harborough, because he has just a couple months to live. And I wanted an actor who could really play that and not be afraid to milk that emotion at the end. And it's actually quite touching.
I'm glad to hear it, because I think it's absolutely meant to be. It's a second chance for this person who is about to depart this world. But that's
Yeah.
so moving too. The idea of like, no, like you still matter. Like
Yes.
who you are, your moral makeup is still important, and don't do this. Like, don't become that person who we've seen in literally every other story featuring Monsieur Poirot and pretty much everyone else in the canon, right? I mean, there are a couple of these stories. It's why I argued at the festival that The Affair at the Bungalow, that Miss Marple short story, where she too prevents someone from going through with their scheme, where she's like, maybe this isn't worth it. I love that. It's a really neat twist on
Yes.
the genre, and Christie doesn't do it that often. And then we have something, a little bit more straightforward, I suppose, in The Yellow Iris, but as in, the full-length novel Sparkling Cyanide, someone has died before the story starts, and the idea is, oh, we're going to recreate things and try to figure out who done it. And it seems as though someone dies over the course of The Yellow Iris, but they do not actually, right? So we technically don't have anyone dying in this Poirot double bill. Is that right? Could that be right?
That is absolutely correct. We do have a murder in the past, which is, of course, very Christie.
Yep.
What is not very Christie with Yellow Iris is that she actually doesn't wrap everything up with a perfect bow. We don't really know what happened to Iris. Hercule Poirot does not necessarily solve that particular murder. So that is one interesting thing about the play, is that she does leave that ambiguous ending. Very unusual for Christie.
Yeah, it's also, I think most people tend to conflate Yellow Iris with Sparkling Cyanide, understandably, because the sort of mise en scène is the same, right? But it is very different. I mean, first of all, Poirot is in the short story and in this play, but yes, we know exactly what happened at the end of Sparkling Cyanide to Rosemary.
Yes, and it goes in a much different direction.
Yeah, we really don't have that clarity at the end of The Yellow Iris. I mean, are you worried that people are going to be annoyed by that?
No, because honestly, it didn't even dawn on me the first time I read them, and I had already agreed to direct, and I read the script. That aspect of it didn't even dawn on me because you get what you want from Agatha Christie, I think, in these two stories. And you don't necessarily, when you're reading Christie, it's not necessarily, that we're so bloodthirsty that we have to have a death. What we want is an interesting story, an interesting puzzle, something with a surprising twist at the end. And I think both of these give us that, even if we don't necessarily get a dead body.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they both show, how much more there is to the genre. I just think people can be so reductive about how mysteries function, and it's like you have a dead body, and then you figure out who done it, and everything is wrapped up because the whole point of detective fiction is to reestablish order, and in that way get a little bit of a reprieve or a catharsis because the world is such a crazy place. And it's like yes, yes, yes. Always that is a valid, I think, interpretation of what's happening when many people read detective fiction, but it's just one, and there's so these stories have so many iterations and variations to them, especially in different media, and that's what's so great. I mean, this is Agatha Christie experimenting and doing some different things, right? Especially in The Yellow Iris. And she loved doing that. She lived to do that. And we see her playing fast and loose with the short stories because it's not the same investment for her readers, and with the plays because she knew that it was a collaborative effort and that she could do some different things because it was a different medium. And it just sort of, broadens, I think, our understanding of what's possible in the genre and just within Agatha Christie, within the Christieverse, right? So I really love that. I can't wait I was excited before this conversation to come and watch the double bill, but now my expectations are just through the roof, Chris.
Oh, yes. I love to hear that. Actually, I don't. No, believe me, knowing you were coming, Kemper, has definitely lit a fire under me for sure. Even more so than perhaps it would have. But Christie alone does that. I mean, I'm clearly passionate about her and doing great adaptations of her work, since there are a lot of times that I see adaptations of her work that are not so great. And I feel like I understand her and how to pull her off, and if that makes sense. And doing a Poirot is definitely new to me, and it's been exciting and it's been fun. And I'm really enjoying collaborating with my Poirot, who I found out is actually the same age or very close to the same age that Francis Sullivan was when he did this in Wasp's Nest. On TV. And I have to say, they even look a little bit alike. DJ, who's playing Poirot, is a very large man. I believe he's 6'5". Another reason why I kind of pushed him towards Ustinov, just for his stature. So yeah, this has been a real fun experience. And I only wish we had more than one weekend. We only have 3 performances. So I'm really hoping we get big audiences for them. And who knows, maybe someone will see it and we'll go on the road.
Future Kemper here once again with a very happy update and a little bit of a spoiler. This Poirot Double Bill was such a sensation at Riverside that Chris actually is able to stage it again in late June of this year, still in the Southern California area. But for anyone from that region, I just want to give a heads up that it will be playing on June 28th and 29th at the Redland Footlighters Theater. If I have a link to that, I will throw it into the show notes. Technically, according to the chronology of this episode, I haven't yet watched the show, but my spoiler is that it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it, and I encourage anyone who can to go see it at the end of June. Okay, back to Chris once again. I mean, this is a very obvious question, but I just have to ask it because it occurred to me. You have the same actor playing Poirot in both of the plays.
Yes, I definitely do. Yeah. I could have cast completely new actors in each play. I decided that not just Poirot.
You're
same
doubling
actors
up on other roles. Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
I love that.
The same people who are in the Wasp's Nest are in Yellow Iris, and then I added the other people to Yellow Iris because it's a bigger
there
cast.
Are more characters. Yes, the Wasp's Nest is very, very small. I mean, again, really, truly written for the stage. Like it's
yes,
such a stage play.
And it's my favorite kind of directing is having small casts, and because you can really dig into every little moment and bring every little motivation out and really explore their relationships, and that's fun. You can do that even with Christie.
Oh, for sure. Well, Chris, I am, as I mentioned, so excited to come see this play. So we are not done. I mean, this is kind of part 1, and technology willing, I really am going to try to do a little bit of on the fly, on the go recording of my impressions of the show, and there are going to be some other Christie fans who frequent the festival and who may have even featured on the podcast before, who I might be able to interview before and after while we're watching it, and just give a little bit of a sense of the excitement and I think the delight of being able to watch live theater when it's written by Agatha Christie, and especially when it's something that we don't see very often. So hopefully we can transition out of this conversation and go right into that, so long as it works. And yeah, I just want to say, I know you're so busy right now because you have these shows coming up. So I really appreciate you taking the time in your precious off time here that you have to have this conversation with me. And I can't wait to watch the show. Break a leg.
Well, thank you so much, Kemper, and I'm very excited for you to see it. And we'll definitely talk after.
And I am here. I have parked. I am walking from the hospital parking lot where I parked. It's actually a really nice sort of hospital campus, and the Riverside Community Players are kind of nestled in the corner. And it is very balmy here in the Inland Empire in California, which is just as it should be. And I cannot wait to take in this show. All right, so I'm sitting here in my seat, and we are waiting anxiously for the performance to begin. I'm actually sitting next to Jeff Rock, who is one of the, and I say this in the kindest of ways, Jeff, but you're a fixture at the Agatha Christie Festival in Torquay in the south of England. Have not been on the podcast before, but you have definitely been a part of my life for a couple of years now, so very happy to have you as my seatmate here at the performance. How are you feeling about this show? Are you excited?
It sounds like it's going to be really interesting. Chris gave us the thumbs up for yesterday's performances, said they went off without a hitch or a Hitchcock, and it'll be interesting. Well, Brad wasn't here for a bad pun, so I had to do it for him.
We did. Unfortunately, our friend Brad Friedman, who, and I'm calling him out here on the podcast, former guest co-host, he was supposed to be here. He is not. We are shaming him. We are chastising him right now, but, maybe he'll get to see this double bill, but probably not, because this doesn't really get performed every day. And by the way, I should mention, this is a lovely in the round theater here. So we're going to get all sorts of performances, I think, from all sorts of angles. I love a Christie in the round myself. And I think the lights are actually beginning to dim, so I should probably shut up, and we're going to watch the show. Oh, we're going backstage here. Look at this. Oh, so as you're backstage here, you can even look through the people.
Yeah, so if you're whispering to each other, I probably know.
You heard everything that Jeff and I were saying.
We didn't mean what we said.
So this is all the backstage area.
Yep. All of your props, the drinks and everything.
Kitchen / shop / props, storage. Yeah.
I really liked the minimalist staging also. I think it worked really well because you don't need that much, but it's
we
you had enough.
Of having some of the things from Wasp's Nest on the stage for Yellow Iris just to give it some. But we were we don't need it.
Yeah, no, you really didn't.
It's full, and with their costumes and everything,
we did notice that you were doing some of the staging there.
Breaking union rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you purposely choose the two, murders that didn't happen?
No,
together, or it just worked out that way?
No, that was my fun fact, Jeff. I didn't want to spoil it for you, but no murders. It's a Poirot Double Bill that has no murders actually happening.
Sometimes they have, if they do a musical, sometimes they'll have the pianist up there playing the little band.
Okay.
But
how did Poirot get up to where the phone call?
Right up here.
I see.
Yeah.
That was great too, having him in his little. It was like Whitehaven Mansions up there.
To put him for that little scene,
He needs to be elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's a little Romeo and Juliet balcony.
Yeah.
And this is where Barton makes his quick change into Luigi.
Yep. I noticed that I wondered if you were going to have him put a mustache on, and you did.
Yeah, I actually
And I like the jacket so short that you can tell.
You can totally
that,
and tell that it's not the normal waiter
yeah.
if you're really looking for it. You played fair. You played fair with those clues.
He changed to a short.
Yeah, no,
I know. That's what we're saying.
When he was bending over,
but it looked different.
That wasn't him because he had the full cut jacket.
You could tell that it wasn't him, but also that it wasn't the regular waiter. Like it looked different from the regular waiter.
Okay, so this then backstage. Here's the green room.
Very nice. Yeah.
And we have a picture of Dame Agatha. We'll just pretend it's her.
I know she can hide.
Looks a little bit like her.
And if you go up to
Close
the booth,
enough.
you'll see there's a director's box.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of hidden from you can't really see it from the audience. I rarely ever sit here because it just feels weird.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's almost like a cockpit of a plane.
You're on the bridge of a starship here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, though. I like that.
And then, this is Kylie. These are my friends. Some of them flew here from other countries.
Canadians came in just for the show, breaking a Canadian boycott.
It's the power of Agatha Christie right there.
And then this is where I did my announcement.
That was you,
Yes,
right?
it
Yes, I thought so.
So why only the weekends? Why can't? I mean,
Because this isn't part of the regular season.
I feel like you could have gotten way more people easily. It had a great reaction too. Like everyone was absolutely loving it. It was really great.
I mean, every audience.
Really?
So receptive and.
So how many performances did you do total? Three?
Three, yeah. I'm gonna round them up and get.
Oh, now we're outside, right in the bright of day. It's always strange to come out of a theater into daylight.
Yeah, it was such a nice day today too.
I know. Oh yeah, and they're in costume out here in the sunlight too. Wow. All right, so I'm here after the show with our Poirot, who was in as of course the same character in both Wasp's Nest and Yellow Iris, and he did such a fantastic job. So what is your real name, Monsieur?
My full name is Daniel Gabriel Hernandez, but people call me just DJ Hernandez.
Well, and I assume your French accent, I should say Belgian accent, was not real.
No, it was not real, and no, that was totally fake. No, but it was well practiced and well loved.
You did a wonderful job, and Chris was actually saying, we spoke a little bit before the show, how one of the inspirations that he was talking with you about was Peter Ustinov, actually, very specifically, because your presence is, you're very tall, you're towering over me right now. Listeners won't be able to see this, but you are much taller than your typical Poirot, much more on the Peter Ustinov level of things than David Suchet, so that makes a lot of sense given the physicality that I think you bring to the live play. And I don't know if you know this, but there is a tradition of bigger Poirots actually on the stage from the very beginning. So it felt like you were very much in that tradition. I'm just curious how familiar you are with all of that and what you were thinking as you were preparing for this role.
Yes, I will say when Chris first originally offered me the role, it was very daunting. One of my favorite characters, I think, I am 25 years old, so I will say growing up watching it later, I know the characters you performed later in his life, but I really went to the script and trying to find the action. It's very personal stories, especially with Wasp's Nest. It's Poirot with his friend, and of course in the second one it's a kind of a crime of passion, trying to figure it out. But I did my homework. I watched every single performance. I would say Ustinov definitely bringing some of his humor, but also the charm of Kenneth Branagh in the more recent ones, and those were the ones I really have a heart for. But revisiting a lot of the older ones, I think I knew I had to bring something authentic, or more specifically authentic to what Poirot means to me and what this script called for. And I think it was just a sense of urgency, that sense of, I would say in my mind, this is Poirot, maybe year 3 or 5, really making a name for himself, but not fully in the whole realm of where he's at in Murder on the Orient Express or Poirot's Christmas or even Death on the Nile, but someone who is having these little small crimes and figuring it out. So definitely really going back to the script, especially because they're so short and I only have so much to tell the audience what my Poirot can bring. But just bringing that energy and just really finding the drive of solving those crimes, and really at the end of the day, what he always cares about is people and making sure he saves, protects, and also has a little fun doing it.
Yeah, well, and the great thing about these two shows is that no one actually dies in the course of them. We don't have an actual murder committed. He prevents one in the first one, and he kind of sort of solves a past one. I mean, not completely, and prevents one in the second as well.
Correct. And I think that was also something special. It was like having these instances where you get to see him prevent and think and really try to solve these crimes before they happen, and dropping the audience in the middle of that. It made it a little bit more intimate, which I really loved, just being there with my castmates playing these suspects and really just trying to have that. And I think bringing the audience in too, it's such an intimate experience, especially how we did it in the round. And you get to really see the blood, sweat, the eye contact, all that good stuff. So
yeah. Well, and I love what you said about they are relatively early Poirot plays, and that makes a lot of sense that since you're younger, that you are kind of inhabiting a slightly younger version of Poirot. And I could feel that because you're very lively on the stage, and there was a lot of humor too. Like you really, you got some really great audience laughs when you wanted them. Like, it's not like they were laughing at you; they were very much laughing with you. So. No,
and that was the one thing, is just finding he is, in my version, more lively. He had those moments, but I think it's also just, he is overall human. And that was the one thing that Chris told me, is like, we are trying to bring a humanity to these larger than life characters, and without some levity. He's not without his quirks that I think the audience holds on to, and especially with his mannerisms, because he innately is, who he is. And he has a lot of those quirks that make him so fun to watch as he solves the case. And you can't help but root for him for solving the crime. Yeah.
He certainly has his foibles, and it's been really great being able to talk to you as you're still in costume.
Yes.
And I have to say, is the mustache real?
It is real.
I can tell.
I did grow my mustache. The one thing I told Chris when he cast me in the show was, I'm going to grow a mustache. I refuse to actually have a fake mustache.
Yeah.
But just because the past iterations of this character performed at this theater have used fake mustache, much to, I think, a lot of people's humor. But I grew it. And I think I would say I'm pretty proud of it.
And you have a big enough mustache. It's definitely waxed a little bit at the ends, right? And curled. You probably wouldn't do that to your mustache in your day-to-day life. I don't know, though. I don't know your life.
I don't know. No. I will say I normally spot a goatee if anyone's usually seen me. But I will say this is the first Chris Diehl show that I actually am not clean-shaven. As I played Leonard Vole in Witness for the Prosecution as well. Oh. So I have a history of working with this man.
Okay. You also played Leonard Vole.
In Witness for the Prosecution, which was another an honor role to play. But this definitely, I would say, his hand down was daunting, but very fun.
Well, and what's cool is that there was a fake mustache used in the course of this show, but never on Poirot. So that's very, very cool. Just because I obviously didn't record the play itself, since I was told not to, nor would I do that, I would love if you could just give us a tiny bit of dialogue just in your voice as Poirot, because I think that'll just help listeners get a sense of the show.
My name is Hercule Poirot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, mon ami.
Well, that was a delight. I'm now on my way back from the show. I'm going back home, and some of the thoughts that are just sort of swirling in my head are that Wasp's Nest in particular features another really great variation on the love triangle in Christie in a way that I never appreciated before. I talk a lot about how Triangle at Rhodes is one of my favorite love triangle shorter stories. That one is a novella, since there's one love triangle that appears to be the crucial love triangle in the story, but then as it turns out, it's a different love triangle that sort of overlaps with but doesn't map exactly onto that other love triangle, which turns out to be the key to solving the mystery. And here we just have one love triangle, but where it seems that one woman has thrown off one man for another man, what in actuality has happened is that that woman has thrown off one man for another man and then gone back to the man she originally threw off. And how interesting that we have a rare male-male-female love triangle. In Christie, it's usually female-female-male. And I love the fake out there that it's the original man who the woman is going back to. It's not the person who she seems to have left in the lurch. There's a little bit of a switcheroo going on there. It's a little bit of a variation on the who is really the victim game, which she plays to such perfection in Evil Under the Sun, when we see that Arlena Stewart Marshall is really the prey and not the predator. Here, it's unclear which of the two men is thwarted in love and which is the quote-unquote winner. And getting clarity on that solves the mystery. It's also, dare I say, similar to what Christie does, actually, in Towards Zero, which is a mystery of hers I've been thinking about a lot since we have a new splashy BBC adaptation. Not that I have seen it yet, since it is not legally streamable yet in the United States, and I have not watched it as of yet. I will watch it when it comes out on BritBox here in the US and Canada.
Future Kemper here. I have now watched Toward Zero, and oh boy, do I have thoughts. If you would like to hear those thoughts, you can check out the podcast's May Patreon episode. Link is in the show notes.
But in that one, we have the familiar 2 women, 1 man love triangle. And the solution to that one is that the first wife was not in any way thrown over. She was actually desperate to leave that marriage because the man in the triangle is a psychopathic murderer, in fact. And while the first wife, and to a certain extent the second wife now, are victims, the first wife, crucially, is not a victim of her husband's straying. That, in fact, has been her salvation. And the topsy-turvy dynamics there, which are really hard, I think, to figure out until we're told them at the end, remind me a little bit of the topsy-turvy dynamics that are going on in Wasp's Nest. It really was striking to me how well suited both of these plays were for live theater because they involve visual tricks. There's the sleight of hand of Poirot replacing the bottle of potassium of cyanide with a harmless substance in Wasp's Nest. A sleight of hand that takes place on the stage, and I didn't even see it because my angle was not the best for seeing it. I was looking for it, and I know exactly when it happened, but I wasn't quite able to catch it. I definitely was able to catch our faux waiter serving everyone around the table while that musical number was playing.
As I saw you under the moon, this new romance
With a different jacket and a fake mustache. And I felt very proud of myself for zeroing in on him and ignoring the singer, as lovely as she was and as wonderful a job as she did. I think to a certain extent the staging of Yellow Iris lives or dies with that singer being able to sing convincingly as a professional performer, and this actor really, really pulled it off. I was very impressed. I just had such a wonderful time. Whenever I see Christie on the stage, I'm reminded of what a powerful medium the theatrical medium is for her and how important it is when it comes to the way that so many people are introduced to Christie and foster their love of Christie, especially when it comes to these more intimate amateur productions of her work. And let's make no mistake, amateur does not mean cheap or mediocre or half-hearted, as evidenced by this performance today. Amateur theater, especially when it comes to Christie, is so crucial and definitely deserves to be celebrated, so I'm glad that I could do my part with this roving episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. I still have over 50 miles till I get home, but the sun is still shining. That is the beauty of a matinee. When you get out, you still have so much more of your day to go. And I will spend the rest of my Sunday with a little more pep in my step, thanks to Christopher Diehl and all of the talented actors and crew and other creative folks who he assembled for this Poirot Double Bill, and of course, thanks to Agatha Christie herself.
Thank you again to Christopher Diehl and to everyone who brought A Poirot Double Bill to glorious life at the Riverside Community Players. Thank you also to Jeff Rock for providing some audience commentary and for keeping me company during and after the show. And as I mentioned earlier in the episode, those 3 performances in Riverside did so well that A Poirot Double Bill will live again at the end of June, June 28th and 29th at the Redlands Footlighters Theater for anyone in the Southern California area. It's a great show. Check it out. And I also have some late-breaking news from my friend Chris, which is that the next season of the Riverside Community Players is kicking off
with a performance of Towards Zero. It remains to be seen which Towards Zero they're putting on, because we've got two versions, one written by Gerald Verner, and then, of course, the version written by Agatha Christie herself. Can you guess which one I'm hoping they go with? But that is very exciting. And since I just mentioned Towards Zero, I will yet again plug this month's Patreon episode, which is all about that recent BritBox adaptation of Towards Zero, starring Angelica Houston and Matthew Rhys and many others. I have lots and lots and lots of thoughts, so head on over to Patreon if you'd like to hear what I have to say. There's a link in the show notes. And I've also provided a link in the notes to Riverside Community Players, as well as Redlands Footlighters Theater. Okay, for my next episode, I am going to be interviewing a mystery author who has been inspired many times over by Agatha Christie. His name is Jeffrey Round, and the novel of his that we focused on is The Sulphur Springs Cure. Lovely Canadian novelist. We had a great conversation. I can't wait to bring that to you. I think so many contemporary mystery authors are inspired by Christie, and it's always good to speak with an array of them about that inspiration. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, I am just about to leave for my jaunt through the south of the United States. So join me in Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. I cannot wait to make some real-life connections with you listeners. It makes me so very happy. Speaking of real-life connections, I will be at the Agatha Christie Festival in Torquay in September. And I hear that my event is very close to selling out, actually, but there are still some tickets available, so I have included a link to my event at the festival in the show notes. If you haven't yet bought your tickets, but you're planning on attending, I suggest you buy them now. And as usual, I have links to my 2 mystery novels within the Ghostwriter Mysteries series. Thank you all so much for your support of me as an author, in addition to my podcasting activities. But if you'd like to support me as a podcaster, leave a rating and or a review if you haven't yet done so. That is also very much appreciated. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Choice but to adore you. Soon as I saw you under the moon, this new romance has only just started. Why must we be parted so soon? You live in my heart, and you're a part of all the loveliness I see. You live in my dreams and in my schemes. I make or fashioned for you only. You live in my heart, no matter how the waves of ocean roll in between.